The human race has been exploiting the natural resources of the planet without regard to the consequences of its actions. The Arctic Circle is melting at a rate of almost 1% per year, and we are witnessing an alarming increase in temperature, especially in the last few decades. The need for sustainable living is now greater than ever before. Man's need for energy has a significant impact on the planet, as the electricity industry produces over 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. Electricity produced from renewable energy sources such as wind, solar and hydropower can help reduce this damaging effect on the planet. Wind is the fastest growing renewable energy source in the world, enjoying an average annual growth rate of 28% over the past 10 years, compared to less than 3% for fossil fuels. Although Europe represents well over half of the world market, the United States and China are now leading growth, expanding their generating capacity by 45% and 134% respectively in 2007. The global wind market is now valued at $36 billion, and in recent years, turbine manufacturers have struggled to keep pace with exploding demand. The major drivers of this growth are global concerns over climate change and energy security. Wind energy is sustainable and clean, as it generates zero greenhouse gas emissions. With the cost of wind power decreasing nearly 90% since the 1980s, it is also an increasingly affordable and stable energy source, not subject to the price volatility of fossil fuels. Armaec UK Limited is a developer of renewable energy generation projects, specializing in wind farms in emerging markets across the world. Increasing demand for energy due to the high growth of economies, supportive regulatory framework, and good wind speeds make countries such as Armenia, India, and South Africa favorable countries to develop wind farms. Armaec UK Limited is aiming to develop several wind farms in these countries with a long-term strategy to generate a total capacity of 1,500 megawatts by 2015. This would attract a total investment of around €2.5 billion. The development of wind farms consists of 3 stages: securing land and key agreements, wind resource testing, and construction of the wind farm. A desktop study of the relevant wind atlas, which consists of areas with high wind speeds measured by satellite, is done to identify patches of land that have high wind resource. A full site assessment is then carried out to evaluate the wind resource output capacity, access to the land, and distance to the main electricity grid. Once these conditions are satisfactorily met, the local authorities or landowners are moved to enter into a land lease. Application for planning permission is then made, and upon approval, a power purchase agreement is signed with a wholesale buyer of energy, and an application for operator license made if required. Tests have to be carried out to validate the wind speeds calculated by the satellite at turbine operating levels. In order to do this, MET masts with anemometers at heights of 50 meters and 60 meters are erected within the patch. These MET masts are then connected to Armaec's HQ in London via satellite, and wind data is constantly streamed for a year. This data is then entered into specialist software used by the wind industry that analyzes the wind speed, direction, duration, and power. This software will then chart a map that will show the location to erect turbines for optimum performance. Works related to the erection of the turbines is started at the end of year 1, after the wind resource study is completed. Construction of access roads, foundation for turbines, and installing substations are carried out initially. Turbines are then erected and then connected to the national grid via the substation. A 100 megawatt wind farm will be developed using 50 turbines of 2 megawatt capacity. Armaec is offering an innovative and unique investment structure for investors who wish to participate in the early stages of this high-growth energy industry. Operations within each country will be under the umbrella of a locally incorporated subsidiary of Armaec UK Limited, with each wind farm project being undertaken through a special purpose vehicle. Investors are invited to invest in individual SPVs. It is anticipated that each wind farm will have an output capacity of 100 megawatts. The SPV is issuing shares for 40% of the equity for an investment of £350,000 from seed investors. 60% of the project company will be held by Armaec UK Limited's wholly owned subsidiary. Minimum investment is £12,500. At the end of year one, after the wind resource study is completed, private equity investment will be sought from venture capitalists and institutions to start the construction of the wind farm. Armaec and the seed investors will jointly dilute their shareholdings on subscription by the private equity institution, which will invest 30% of the total project cost. The private equity institution will hold 80% equity in the SPV post-investment. Armaec will hold 12% equity, and the seed investors between them will hold 8% of the SPV post-investment. Thus, an investor who has purchased shares for £50,000 will hold an equity of 5.71% in the SPV. When the wind resource study is completed and the private equity institution invests 30% of the total project cost, which is approximately £100 million, the seed investor will hold 1.14% of the enlarged share capital. Cumulative return on investment for a seed investor from dividend distribution is expected to be circa 83% for the first 5 years. This is based on an anticipated dividend distribution policy of 50% of post-tax profit, and the distribution starting from the 4th year after the construction of the wind farm is started. The Republic of Armenia is a landlocked mountainous country in Eurasia, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea in the southern Caucasus. It borders Turkey to the west, Georgia to the north, Azerbaijan to the east, and Iran and the Nakhchivan enclave of Azerbaijan to the south. A transcontinental country at the juncture of Eastern European and Western Asia, Armenia has had and continues to have extensive socio-political and cultural connections with Europe. The Republic of Armenia is an emerging market for wind energy, and the following are the main reasons why Armaec is setting up its first set of wind farms in Armenia. A landlocked country with an average altitude of 1,800 meters above sea level, with suitable high wind speeds of 7.5 to 9.5 meters per second across its mountain ranges. A PPA that has a feed-in tariff of 10 American cents per kilowatt. A purchase term of 15 years, which is guaranteed by the Armenian government for purchase of 100% of output. A lenient planning regime. Strong interest from EU institutions to finance the project. Proximity to grid lines from any site. Politically most stable country amongst the Commonwealth of Independent States. Armaec, providing today's discerning investor an opportunity to be part of a sustainable business.